Concorde, the world's fastest commercial jetliner, was renowned for its speed and elegance, carrying passengers across continents in record time. But beneath its prestige lay a troubled history. On the afternoon of July 2000, as it accelerated down the runway for a routine flight, what began as another journey would become the disaster that forever sealed the aircraft's fate. Today we look into the crash of Air France 4590, a tragedy in which a single strip of metal brought an end to the era of the glamorous Concorde.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
Wind shear.
Terrain ahead. Pull up.
Concorde, the world's first supersonic airliner, made its debut on March 2, 1969 in Toulouse, France. Its first commercial flight was in 1976. It was beautiful, elegant, had a presence of its own. It had a distinct wing shape and the nose visor that came up before entering the supersonic flight regime. It broke the sound barrier and reached Mach 2 in October 1969, flying at twice the speed of sound. Its supersonic speed made it cross the Atlantic in just over 3 hours. Meanwhile, other commercial jets took almost double that time. It was an aircraft for the elites, with a capacity of just 100 passengers, meant high ticket prices. It did not burn fuel, it swallowed it in full. Modern jetliners like the Boeing 777 burns about 16 tons of fuel per hour at maximum takeoff weight. Meanwhile, the Concorde burnt about 25 tons, mostly because of its reheat or the afterburner system that produced almost about 18% of extra thrust. A total of just 16 Concordes were ever built, which were operated by Air France and British Airways. Behind all the glamour, concealed Concorde's not-so-great past. Fuel is the major chunk of the expenses done by any airline. With Concorde's fuel burn, it was never economical to fly. With modern jet engines coming in, which burned less fuel and were more efficient, the need for Concorde was hanging by a thread. On the 25th of July 2000, an Air France flight 4590 was preparing for a charter flight from Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport in France to New York in the United States. Manufactured under two companies, one being a French company, Aerospatiale, and the other British, named British Aircraft Corporation. 21-year-old Concorde registered Foxtrot Bravo Tango Sierra Charlie was parked at the gate getting prepared. It entered service on October 24, 1979. It had accumulated a total of 11,989 hours and 4,873 flight cycles. It had 4 twin-spool turbojet engines known as Olympus 593, manufactured by Rolls-Royce and Snecma. The engines were equipped with a reheat option. When activated, produced about 18% of extra thrust, mostly used during takeoff and in flight to enter the supersonic flight regime. These engines had a contingency mode, where if there is a loss of thrust in one engine, the other 3 engines will automatically reach to around maximum thrust setting. This aircraft completed its D-check on 1st October 1999. These checks are routine maintenance checks of airplanes named A, B, C, D to be done on a specific time interval. D-check, also known as HMV, Heavy Maintenance Visit, being the most extensive maintenance program where the aircraft is basically deassembled and assembled again. It is done to carry out deep inspections of wings, fuselage, hydraulic systems to check for things like corrosion and metal fatigue. The D-check can take up to 8 to 10 months to complete. Between 17th and 21st July 2000, its left main landing gear bogie was replaced in order to correct for under-inflation detection system malfunction. This system basically detects under-inflation of a tire and sends a visual signal in the cockpit. Concorde has 13 fuel tanks with a capacity of 95.5 tons approximately. The tanks 1, 2, 3, 4 are engine supply tanks, or also known as collector tanks, meaning only these 4 tanks directly feed fuel to the engines. Tank number 5, 6, 7, 8 are main tanks that supply fuel to the collector tanks. tanks 5A, 7A are auxiliary fuel tanks, and tanks 9, 10, 11 are trim transfer tanks. They keep the center of gravity of the aircraft within limits during all phase of flight. Tank number 5 will be the focus for today's story. Today, this aircraft had no technical faults and was perfectly airworthy for its flight. The captain was a 56 years old, very experienced instructor pilot. He was rated to fly quite a few different airplanes, like Boeing 727, 737, Airbus 300, A320, and Airbus 340. He got his Concorde rating in 1999. He had a total of 13,477 hours, with 5,495 hours as captain and 284 hours as captain on the Concorde. The first officer was 50 years old, very experienced as well. He flew Nord 262, Marine Solinaire, Caraval, and Airbus 300. He did his Concorde training in 1989 and was a Concorde simulator flight instructor since 1999. He accumulated a total of 10,035 hours, with 2,698 hours on Concorde as a first officer. The flight engineer was 58 years old, who got his flight engineer license issued in 1968. He was certified on Caravel, Falcon 20, Boeing 727, 737, and 747 Classic. He got certified on Concorde in 1997. Total experience of 12,532 hours, with 937 hours as flight engineer on the Concorde. This set of crew were very much experienced, with having thousands of hours of experience under their belt on different types of airplanes. The captain was the pilot flying, and first officer was pilot not flying or pilot monitoring for this sector. In the cabin there were 100 passengers, and for their safety were 6 cabin crews. This made a total of 109 souls on board. Visibility was 15 kilometers with temperature of 19 degrees Celsius. While preparing the cockpit for departure, the crew requested ATC to use runway 26 left for takeoff. Runway 26 left was the longest, with a length of 4,215 meters and 45 meters in width. The takeoff speeds calculated today were V1 150, VR 198, and V2 220 knots. There are different speeds known as V speeds in aviation. V1 is the decision speed. At this speed, a decision has to be made to either abort or continue the takeoff. VR is the rotation speed at which the pilot pulls the control column or the side stick to start lifting the nose up of the aircraft. V2 is the takeoff safety speed. At or above this speed, the aircraft can safely climb out in the case of engine failure without having any lateral control problems. With a rotation speed of 198 knots, which is very high, they needed the longest runway today in Paris. At 14 hours 7 minutes in the afternoon, crew received their pushback clearance and pushed back from the gate. Soon they started the engines and taxied out towards runway 26 left. As they approached runway 26 left, they got clearance from ATC to line up. 2 minutes later, they received takeoff clearance with the winds reported to be at 090 degrees 8 knots. The crew were not aware that a metallic strip was laying in front of them in the center of the runway. 5 minutes ago, a DC-10 operated by Continental Airlines took off from the same runway and left behind this metallic strip. The captain pushed the thrust levers forward for takeoff. With the reheat engaged and clearly visible, the aircraft starts accelerating down the runway towards the metallic strip. Soon the first officer calls
100 knots.
9 seconds later, they reached V1, the decision speed. Now they cannot abort the takeoff because the runway left is just not enough to stop the Concorde. First officer calls out
V1.
At the same time, the aircraft ran over the metallic strip, damaging the right tire of the left main landing gear. The metallic strip cut straight through the tire, and large rubber pieces struck the underside of the left wing, rupturing tank number 5. The left wing was on fire now. There was a long streak of fire behind the aircraft. In the cockpit, the crew did not know what just happened. Suddenly, engine number 2 suffered severe loss of thrust, and engine 1's thrust reduced slightly. Captain pushed the rudder to keep the aircraft on the center line. ATC informed them about the flames coming from behind the aircraft.
4590, you have flames. You have flames behind you.
The captain started to rotate the burning aircraft. Flight engineer announced,
Engine fail number 2.
Engine 1 was still producing slight thrust. Soon the engine fire alarm sounded. Flight engineer called.
Shut down engine 2.
The captain called for engine fire procedure. The aircraft was struggling to climb now. Captain put the engine to thrust lever to idle, and the flight engineer pulled the fire handle, and the engine fire alarm stopped. Engine 1 thrust was coming back close to normal again. Captain calls for the landing gear retraction. The first officer puts the landing gear lever 2 up, but the landing gear was not retracting. The aircraft was losing speed and was barely able to climb because of the engine failure and landing gear still down, with engine 2 already being shut down. Engine 1 again had a loss of thrust. The cockpit was again filled with a fire alarm in engine number 2. The crew were running out of options now. First officer called out the speed. It was 200 knots, 20 knots below the takeoff safety speed of 220 knots. The aircraft began to roll to the left because of the asymmetry in thrust and because the left wing was on fire. The first officer informed ATC that they were trying to land at an airport nearby. Now engine 1 suffered almost total power loss. Engine 2 was already shut down. The only 2 operating engines were the right side engines, engine number 3 and 4. The captain tried but was unable to control the left bank of the aircraft because of the thrust asymmetry, fire on the left wing, which damaged the flight control surfaces. The crew were left with no options in a situation where no one can do nothing. GPWS warning started to sound several times. The aircraft continued to roll to the left, reaching a bank of over 105 degrees. In a final attempt to level the bank, the captain put engine number 3 and 4 thrust levers to idle. The aircraft became level in bank, but there was just not enough altitude left, nor sufficient thrust to continue the flight safely. The aircraft unfortunately crashed onto a hotel nearby the airport. All 109 souls on board and 4 people on the ground were perished. The metallic strip came from the thrust reverser cowl door engine number 3 of a DC-10. It was improperly manufactured and installed without the prescribed procedures. Since the entry of Concorde in service, there were 57 incidents of tire burst, deflations in both Air France and British Airways. 22 of those events were during takeoff. Some were caused by foreign object damage or FOD, which led to the penetration of the fuel tanks. None showed any rupture of fuel tanks or indication of a fire. 6 events led to the penetration of the fuel tanks, the most significant being on 14 June 1979 in Washington. In that incident, tire number 6 deflated, causing damage to the tire treads, which further led to the number 5 tire burst, puncturing the tank, number 2, 5 and 6. The crew were unable to retract the landing gear after takeoff and had to eventually return back to Washington after 24 minutes. Post this incident, a study was carried out to find out solutions to limit the risk of a tire burst in Concorde. The study found out that there was a risk to the engine, fuel tanks, and a risk of fire was also there. This risk was more than the manufacturer had thought during the certification of Concorde. The study further found that the risks were there, but it was still at a very low level. The engine would still continue to work normally. They found out that ignition cannot be caused by rubber or metal debris if they penetrated the tanks. Overall, the risk of fire was limited. After this, few ADs, airworthiness directives, were given. As a result of these studies carried out, the risk of damage from pieces of tire, the conclusion came out it was not necessary to protect the underside of the wings. The surge on engine 1 was most likely caused by ingestion of hot gases or solid debris, probably pieces of tire as well. The investigators made 2 hypotheses. It was caused by electric arcing in the landing gear bay area, ignition on contact with the hot sections of the engine. After doing numerous tests, they were not able to convincingly identify the actual reason of the fire, but they thought that electrical arcing may be the most probable reason. The large rubber piece from the tire did not directly rupture the tank number 5. It was caused by other phenomena. One of the reasons they believed was due to hydrodynamic pressure surge. It is a sudden, extreme spike in fluid pressure caused by a rapid change in fluid velocity. The fuel inside the tank is moving as the aircraft accelerates, and the large rubber piece hitting the tank stopped its motion abruptly. This abrupt halt converts the kinetic energy into immense potential energy and generates a violent shock wave, causing deformation to the fuel tank skin. Why the Concorde was unable to maintain safe flight might be another question in your mind. There are 3 reasons for it. Because of engine number 2 failure, engine 1's slight thrust loss, then again working normally, then again losing thrust, and then eventually failing as well, led to the aircraft unable to accelerate in a high drag situation. The speed was 200 knots, 20 knots below the safe speed to fly with engine failure. The crew tried, but they were unable to retract the landing gear. Because of this, the landing gears produced lots of drag, and the thrust available was just insufficient to counter this. Since the left wing was on fire, it led to the burning of significant flight controls on the left side, making the aircraft less controllable laterally. All of these 3 reasons contributed to the loss of control of the aircraft. The pilots did the best what they could do under these circumstances. Prior to takeoff, they did brief for single engine failure, as pilots always do, but a dual engine failure was not even in the books written anywhere. Concorde's manual did not have anything related to dual engine failure on takeoff. This accident sealed the fate of Concorde. Compared to other aircrafts, Concorde had many failures in tire, engines, hydraulics, more frequently than any other airplane type. Concorde was becoming very expensive to operate, with high fuel burn, more system problems, capacity of just 100 passengers, older generation turbojet engines, and especially after 9/11 attacks, when the aviation demand fell rapidly, that was another hit to Concorde. In 2003, after 27 years in service, Air France and British Airways announced the retirement of Concorde. Its final commercial flight marked the end of the world's fastest supersonic jetliner's legacy. In the end, being economical won the race against being fast and saving time.